Good day, students. Welcome to math.serve.com. In this clip, we're going to be going over how to solve multi-step equations. So the instructions for the problems are as follows. We're to solve each equation. Now we are going to be starting with relatively straightforward problems and then proceeding to slightly more complicated ones afterwards, okay? So for problem 1, what if we have the equation p plus 1 plus 2p equals negative 20. Okay, so there are no parentheses here, so no need to distribute. So what we're going to do is proceed to combine like terms on both sides of the equation if possible. On the left side of the equation, we have like terms. We have the first degree variable in terms of p. Those two can be combined. Now what we're going to be adding are the coefficients, okay? P has a coefficient of 1, and this has a coefficient of 2. So when we add those two together, we end up with 3p plus 1 equals negative 20. All right, so on the left side, there are no like terms to be combined, and on the right side also. Now we're going to proceed to isolate the variable term. To achieve that, we have to, let's leave 3p alone on the left side and move 1 to the right. So we'll use the inverse operation. Subtract 1 from both sides. So that leaves you with 3p equals, now we have the same sign, so you add and keep the sign, negative 21. Now that we've isolated the term with the variable component in it, we're now going to get the variable itself isolated, okay? So we have a 3 being multiplied by the variable, so we need p isolated. To achieve that, we're going to undo this multiplication by using the inverse operation, which is division. So you divide both sides by 3. And you end up with p equals negative 21 over 3 is negative 7. Okay, anytime you're dividing numbers and the signs are different, you always end up with a negative. So there is the value of p. All right, let's try a slightly more complicated problem, not too complicated. Question number 2. Now, what if we have the equation 96 equals negative 8 times the quantity negative 8 minus 2n? Okay, now unlike problem number 1, we have a parenthesis to deal with. So when you're solving an equation that involves a parenthesis, you want to address that as soon as possible. So that is what we're going to do now. There are two ways we can go about solving this problem. We can either divide both sides by negative 8 or we can distribute. I'm going to distribute because in some problems where you have multiple quantities in parentheses, division might cause a big problem, as we'll be seeing in problem number 4, okay? So I'm going to just have us use the division route because the distribution route because it's safer, okay? So we have 96 equals 8 times 8 is positive 64. 8 times 2 is 16, so we have 16n. Remember, whenever you multiply the same size, you have a positive. We multiply different sides, you have a negative. So minus times minus is plus. 8 times 2 is 16n. Okay, now let's go ahead and get the variable term isolated. So to accomplish that, 64 needs to go to the other side. So we subtract 64 from both sides of our equation. And let's see what we get. On the left side, we end up with positive 32. And then this adds up to 0, and you have 16n. Okay, let me switch my equation around like that. Now divide both sides by 16 in order to get n isolated. So divide, and you end up with n equals 32 over 16 is 2. So there goes your final result for problem number 2. All right, let's take a look at question 3. It's slightly more complicated problem. So let's say we have negative 34 equals negative 8 over 3 times negative 7 over 2x plus 1/2. Okay, so this is a multi-step equation involving fractions. So what we're going to do, as we did in problem number 2, is get rid of this parenthesis first, and then we will try and isolate the term with the variable component, and then get the variable isolated after that. All right, so we're going to distribute negative 8 over 3 to both terms in the parentheses. Now, when you are distributing or multiplying fractions, you multiply the numerator with the numerator and then the denominator with the denominator. Okay, so negative 34 equals, now for the first multiplication, minus times minus is a plus. 8 times 7 is 56, so we have 56 over 2 times 3, 3 times 2, which is 6. Now append the x piece there, plus. Now distribute that to the 1/2. The sign needs to be resolved correctly, okay? Minus times a plus, signs are different. So minus times plus is minus. 8 times 1 is 8. And then 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, now we're done distributing. We no longer have to deal with the parentheses. Now what we're going to do is proceed to simplify this expression. Now at this point in time, it would be beneficial to eliminate the denominators. Okay, because if you're not dealing with a fractional scenario, then it's much easier to isolate your variable. Okay, that's one way of doing it. You can move 8 over 6 to the left side and then get rid of 5 over 6. That's another way. But the quicker way to do this is to clear out the fractions after distributing by multiplying by the LCD of all the denominator terms. Okay, so 34 has a denominator of 1, invisible denominator, and then this has 6 and then a 6. The LCD is 6. So what I'll do is multiply every single term by 6, basically both sides of the equation. So I'll multiply this by 6, multiply this by 6, multiply that by 6 also. All right, so let's go ahead and see what happens. Now if you multiply 6 by 34, you have 180 plus 24. That's negative 204. And on the right side, the 6's divide out. 6 goes here 1, 6 goes here 1, 6 goes here 1, 6 goes here 1 also. So you have 56x is minus 8. Okay, so next step, you add 8 to both sides of the equation. And then combine. On the left side, let's see what happens. Move this down a little bit. So on the left side, we're going to be subtracting. Because the signs are different, so we're going to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. Now, if you subtract 8 from 204, you can subtract the 4 first, you get 200, subtract another 4, that gives you 196. Keep the sign of the bigger, negative. And then on the right side, these adds up to 0, and you're left with 56x. Okay, and then now we can proceed to get x isolated by dividing both sides by the coefficient of x, which is 56. So our result, x, x is going to be negative 196 divided by 56. Now let's see if we can reduce this. So we know that we can, let's see if we can divide by, well, it's even, so we can definitely divide by 2. How about 4? Well, it looks like 4 can go into it too, so let's divide top and bottom by 4. See what happens. We have divide this by 4, 19 divided by 4, you're left with negative 4. Carry, so that's 16, carry 3, 36, you get a 9. And then 56 divided by 4, 5 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 5 once, carry 1, 16, 4 times. Okay, now it looks like we have multiples of 7 here, so let's Reduce further, divide the numerator by 7, and then the denominator by 7. And then your final result, you have negative 49 over 7 is just negative 7. And then 14 divided by 7 is 2. Okay? So our answer, x, is negative 7 over 2 for problem number 3. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at another problem. So let's say we have to solve the following equation, question number 4. Negative 42 is equal to 8 times 5x plus 6 minus 5 times 5x plus 6. All right, so this is an interesting problem. There are 3 different methods you can use to solve this equation, and they vary in level of complexity. The first involves combining these two since the quantities in the parentheses are identical, and is becoming 3 times 5x plus 6, and then distribute and solve. Another way you can solve this is by factoring out the identical quantities, 5x plus 6, combining like terms, and you have 5x plus 6 times 3 equals negative 42. You distribute and then solve. But the last way, which is the longest way, that's the method we're going to be using, is distribution. Okay? If you want to use more advanced methods, that's fine, but I'm just going to use a method that's applicable to all kinds of equations of this nature, regardless of the nature of what's in the parentheses. Okay? We have 3 different methods to be used for this problem because of a coincidence where the numbers in the quantities in the parentheses are identical. All right, so let's go ahead and distribute. First thing you want to do when you solve an equation involving parentheses, you want to make it look easier by getting rid of the parentheses by distribution. Okay, so we're going to have negative 42 equals 8 times 5 is 40, 40x plus 8 times 6 is 48. 5 times 5, distribute that, you have negative 25x. Now, whenever you're distributing a negative, you have to be very careful to make sure that you distribute the negative to both terms, okay? So minus times plus, this sign inverts to minus 30. Now that we've distributed, we're now going to combine like terms, okay? On the right side, 40x and negative 25x are first degree variables. They're like terms in terms of x. So if we combine those two, we're going to have 15x. We're going to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. And then 48 and 30 are both constants. They're like terms, so we can combine those two. Positive 48 minus 30, you end up with positive 18. All right, now that we have combined like terms, we are going to proceed to get the variable term isolated. So we'll subtract 18 from both sides. Okay, now if we combine like terms on both sides of the equation, let's see what happens. On the left side, we have identical signs, so we'll add and keep the sign. So we have negative 60, sorry. On the right side, the 18s cancel out since they're opposites, equals 15x. Now, to get our variable isolated, we'll divide by the coefficient, which is 15 on both sides. And you end up with x equals 60 divided by 15 is 4. It's also going to be negative since you're dividing two numbers with different signs. So negative 4 is what the value of x is. X is equal to negative 4. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. Really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your study of algebra, the algebra of solving equations, especially those involving multiple steps, to give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very valuable and supportive to us. If you have any questions on the information we just covered, or any algebra concepts in general, just place your questions in the comment section below and we'll be more than glad to support you. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel so you can get updates to other cool math tutorials such as this. More clips can be found on mathgotserved.com. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.